Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in this number 21 in our webinar series. Today, we're looking at ballast water management, a wildly exciting topic and what looks like to be our most popular webinar to date. So we're looking at the 2025 changes that are happening. I'll take you across and I'll show you the agenda for today, if that's okay. So we'll move across to our agenda. What we've got is my welcome. I am Richard Northover. I'm the Managing Director of NAVTOR UK. I'm then handing across to my colleague, Captain Amitabh Sankranti, who's going to talk about the digital logbooks, but also concentrate on the ballast water logbook, the IMO, the MEPC, the Ballast Water Management Convention change, which is critical. And then we follow on with a summary of the regulation changes with Captain Hemant Mentha, and he's going to come through and discuss those regulation changes. And importantly, we're going to talk about questions and answers afterwards. And that's where we have the usual engagement. We get most value, and we hope that we give the most value with these webinars. The thing about webinars is what we're trying to do is share knowledge, ensure that everyone gets maximum value from the range of products and services we offer. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. Our webinar platform is called 23. For the best viewing, we recommend using Google Chrome. Well, let's talk a little bit about 23. So if you look at your screen, you have a number of options. Please feel free at any time during the presentation to put up questions. There's a question tab. The question tab is good because it allows us to record the question. We can then put it up on the screen and discuss it in the Q&A. We're more than happy, of course, if you want to put it in chat, and that's lovely. The chat will also allow us, I can talk about the questions, but I can't show them on screen. So if we get questions, we'll bring them through and we'll make sure we cover them off. My colleagues are on the call now, on the webinar now, and they will try and answer off some of the questions as we go through as well. So it's all about making sure we give you back what you're looking for from the webinar. In our 23 platform, you'll see there are handouts for today. There are two handouts. One is a general digital logbooks handout. The second one is about the changes and what is affected at the moment. So really covering off today. Please remember that once you've signed up to the webinar, at the end of this webinar, when it's finished, you'll also get a link to view it again. So those people who are not able to view will get a link to review the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to look at another critical portion of NAVTOR, which really feeds and sets everything in motion. This is our ecosystem, or our NAVTOR suite. So I'm unapologetic about showing this again. It's useful just to set the scene for what we're talking about. As hopefully everyone will remember, unless you're new, NAVTOR has a cloud of information. That cloud of information connects to the one and only piece of hardware we put on board a vessel, the nav box. And remember, a nav box is a cyber-secure, effectively small-form PC that enables update and information flow to and from the vessel. That also shares data out to various systems. It can, because of its Gateway 460 DNV type approval, share data directly via LAN to ECDIS, but can also share data again via LAN to NavStation, which is our own proprietary back-of-bridge planning station, through our other software on board, Nav Reporting, but also digital logbooks, which again we're talking about today. Any changes made on board will be reflected through the nav box, sent to ECDIS, but also sent back to the cloud. The cloud has an ability to allow shore-based equipment, software, and also web applications to call on that data as well. So any change is viewed real time through our software NavFleet, NavTracker, and of course NavTV onshore. So again, it's a very brief introduction, but it is the ecosystem we work within, and it does make NAVTOR quite unique. I'm going to move across now, and I'm going to introduce my colleague, Captain Amitabh. He is the Director of Shipping Analytics and the Managing Director of NAVTOR India, and he'll talk about digital logbooks themselves, and also the changes. So over to you, Amitabh.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm uh, glad that we have this opportunity to really share with you what changes we have brought to the logbooks. And as opposed to previous webinars where we started with a presentation, here the regulatory change has been quite big. So I thought we'll start straight away with a demo of the software. So I'll run you through the software changes, how it looks in the electronic format, and you should shortly be seeing my screen where the presentation, the software window is up. And so briefly, what I'll do is I will just show you what all is changed in the logbook, and then I'll get into the ballast water log. And this has been something that we've been waiting for a considerable amount of time, because the ballast water log was a logbook that was subject to a lot of individual interpretations, and there was a guidance that was out from Intertanko, but that one had also differences, and people were doing uh, their entries differently. And we were glad that the Ballast Water Management Convention finally came up with a guidance, and in the form of Circular 80, which was revised and then had a direct interpretation by them of how ballast water reporting had to be done. So without further ado, let me log in. I'll quickly run you through what's in the logbooks and then get into the logbooks, the ballast water log. So as on date, what you'd see is we've been continuously enhancing the digital logbooks offering that we have. We have all the environmental logs, and recently we also added the biofouling log. So you can get a complete suite of logs within our system. We've of course been concentrating on a lot of operational logs as well. And what that has meant is quite a number of operational logs have also been added, and we continue to add more into these for making it possible for our um, clients to use the logbooks as a one-stop solution for all log keeping on board. We also have the integrations being enhanced, and as we speak, we have the of course data flowing in from the navbox, which is the GPS positions, course speed, and headings. And we've also recently done an integration with Danelec, which enhances the capture of machinery data into the logs. So what that has meant is even our engine logs and other logs have a greater touch point with all machinery, and a lot of it can be automated as you go to make an entry. Then, of course, the oil record books were there, the ORB Part 2, and these are essentially the logbooks that are very much standard because they are defined by the regulation, and the formats are straight and not variant. But when you come to the deck and engine logs, we have made formats which are specific to company operating policies and procedures, as well as standard formats such as the Norwegian log or a specific flag state logbook also is available in our system. And then these are typically different formats, could be ISM formats, could be formats for as per MCA and standardized in the industry. So when you look at the ballast water log, of course, we had a ballast water log, which was on the earlier reporting format. And as we went into this regulation, we saw that there were about 26 or 27 different types of examples given in the ballast water log, and it was uh, quite a bit of a learning curve when we had to read everything. So what we tried to do is we grouped all activities into different categories. So it's for the user, it would be either it's a ballasting, a deballasting, an exchange, or maybe there's some accident such as an ingress or an uptake of water or an involuntary discharge of water. And then there could be failures of various equipment and systems. You could also be doing a cleaning or flushing. So then that would mean that you're discharging it to a reception facility. And then there are, of course, some additional operations. Wherever some of our clients we have seen are very much focused on also knowing the code. So we kept the code there, but all of these names are also configurable so that you can take a more intuitive name which makes sense to you. When we do the ballast water log, we have all the tanks captured in, and what that has meant is that all these capacities and details of the pumps and other limitations also can be incorporated into the log. So that makes the record keeping that much more auditable and conforming to your actual physical chips particulars and design that is there on board. Then we included the ballast water reporting forms, and this has been a great change, because what we see, the addition, it was, of course, initially for these different activities, you'll see the codes and all these line codes have also changed. So we brought those in, so the user is sort of isolated from having to remember what code to use. So if you were to be using a paper log, you definitely have to remember a code A or a code B and a line one, line two, and then remember what should go into line four. Should it be uptake or should it be the position? And that much more learning to do. But here we made it simple that, okay, you say I'm loading in port, and if you're in port, then you get the UN location ports right away. This data details would load. Or if you're if you're out at sea, then the latitude, longitude would also preload as per your position. And once that details loads in, you can record it straight into the logbook. We've also done a change to our grid. So when you look at selecting a few tanks, if I were to select maybe not so many tanks, a couple of tanks for ballasting at sea, and then say ballasting at sea, so you can actually enter the depth as well. And then this is where I think there was a lot of interpretation and confusion amongst users previously, because if you were asked, is the ballast water management plan implemented, what was the expected answer? Do you give a yes, no, or do you say anything specific? So that's where uh, the MEPC circular has also been explicit. And where it comes to us, we made it a little simpler because we've got all these details here for you. So if you were doing a D1 compliance or a D2 compliance or a contingency measure, you can choose any one of these and actually go and overwrite and change what you want also, so that at least you got the initial information which you can further modify as per the actual situation. So in this case, if I was following the ballast water management plan, I would just say, yes, uh, I'm in compliance with D2. Then here also the method was something that the convention wants you to state, and it varies as per the vessel's trade. If you have an exemption, if you have a different prototype, so likewise there are quite a few drop downs. So if you were going for a, let's say, contingency, then you would have to say what is the reason or what was the for this deviation. So all of these are captured in, and of course you can also write in your free text should there be a specific text approved for your type of operation. So if in this case I'm doing a simple ballast water operation in compliance with D2, I would choose approved BWMS, and then I come to the grid. So the grid is where we're always getting all these questions earlier with the ballast water log. How do you comply with US Coast Guard regulations? How do you comply with Canadian regulations? And these are the sort of questions that were pretty much natural to any shipping company, and especially a person on board, because they didn't want to really repeat all these reports over and over for different regimes. So when you capture the data in the grid, we have some items which are mandatory, which are marked with an asterisk, and then there are certain that you can skip. But if you were to use all these fields, then you're setting yourself up for a much better uh, repository of ballast water records, so that you can comply with any regime in the world. So let's say if I ballasted, if the current ROB was, let's say, nil, and I'm ballasting 2,800 into this, then this was 0. So if you see, I'm also overwriting a few values because I've already got some data into the system, but the data from the historic records would also load into your grid, so that you don't have to really repeat entries in the log keeping operation, and you're getting a more easier way of entering your information in. Then here, if I'm in compliance with D2, I choose compliance with D2 and then the method. So in this case, you're ballasting in, so there's no method being applied right now, so it would be naturally not applicable at this stage. And then you can, of course, specify the density of the liquid and the salinity. So these are all additional features that have come in to ensure that you can comply with other regulations. And then, of course, there's also a record of what pumps you use. So if it was by gravity. So all these additions have come into the grid, which were earlier not there. Then we've also felt that initially with this change coming in, there's going to be a lot of questions, and it is essential that users get more guidance. So what we've done is for every activity, we have captured actually the notes with the activity, and this then makes it pretty straightforward for the user to read while he's making this entry and not have to go to a different source. And as we go along and the, let's say the interpretation gets more nuanced, probably these notes can shrink down. For now, we have kept it very detailed. And I, for one, was a little against having such detailed notes. But I think at the initial stage, when we do it, we'll keep detailed notes and then trim it down as it goes forward. But for the user, I think it really works well because you got all the codes, all the different categories that are expected to go into the entry. So once you've got your entry in, then all of this is into this entry in this format, and you're just ready to save. All the validations and alerts that we expect would also go in. So here we're also looking at dates and times and the start location, lat longs, etc. So you can't really just go in and plug in an entry without having the actual data in. So now I've got the start and stop latitude in. I just need to fix the time. If I fix this time, this then is the duration of the operation. And then I go for a save. This will also do a little bit of check on the physical ROBs. So actually the ROB on this tank was right now 2835. I forced it to be 0. So either I've missed operating something or I haven't updated my tank quantities as of before this operation. So therefore I can override it and say I did not I had a missing entry or I wasn't having an updated starting ROB, but I've done a few entries in the system, so I don't want to override this, so I'll just leave it. But this is just to show you that all your alerts, validations would also be a part of this entry, so nothing can go in which is incorrect. Likewise, if I were to go and make an entry of 5,000 and this exceeds the capacity of the tank, then straight away you're getting an alert here that you're making a, so we are eliminating clerical mistakes, and that makes it that much more consistent, your record keeping, and you don't have to really struggle to get the right information. So now once you've saved it, the actual entry could also be viewed in the system. That like I'll just show that to you. So if you go to the view section, you have all the entries as they have gone in chronologically and as per the date of creation. If there is an attachment or any other details that is associated, let's say I took ballasting at a reception facility and then I've got an attachment also, you can view all of this here. This also serves as a screen to show you the signature status, so you will know if an entry is signed. And you can also check who has the signature right. So if you have a different workflow in your organization, then the chief officer or someone else could be the signatory to this. You can specify that, and what is unticked is still pending a signature. If I press this again, then I can actually see the page level view. And I've, before this webinar, in the interest of time, I actually put a few entries in. So here is a ballasting record with a code A in it. Then there is a, I think I did a ballast water exchange to get, so this is where I received the ballast, and then I've specified the method of exchange and all the details of the total amount retained. Then I went on to do, I think here there is again a recirculation and a change, and then there is uh, a, a deballasting operation under code B. So likewise for the user now, he doesn't have to worry about this code D, code H, because everything is being captured and automatically in the system. The for our existing users who use our logbook, the workflow is identical. you have the same process because anything that is marked in struck off would be visible in the log. If you export the logbook, it will come out in the format of the new ballast water regulation preamble, which gives you details of the ship, then the instructions, and then it follows up with the vessel particulars, and then the people who have made the entry in the logbook and the codes. And if anything is struck off or amended, you would have the watermark appear across it. The other additional thing that was always a doubtful or a, let's say, debated part was how is a missed entry being captured in the logbook. So now there's a code H for a missed entry. And then if you see here, I've written a general mark to show a missed entry. So a missed entry also comes in. And all of these scenarios have been dealt with in the logbook because if I'm now recording an activity and if 29th of January was the last entry in the logbook, and I go to make an entry for 21st, which is a missed entry, then the system automatically picks this up and would prompt you for uh, this entry being out of sequence. So if I just make a short example. So now this will immediately come up as a missed entry. And if you say OK, and I show you the preview, then you have this as a missed entry with the notation and everything taken care of. So that is about ballasting. And likewise, if we've also made it a little smarter. So if you're going and saying you're deballasting, ballasting at a port reception facility, and I choose a tank in the grid, you would see that some part of it is also restricted. So in the methods, you would have PBU, and if you are wondering what PBU is, it's update from a port reception facility. So wherever we could bring in some intelligence, we've done it. Of course, there is a lot of interpretation that would still happen with this logbook, but trying to keep it practical, we've tried to get in as much of the relevant features in so that it's a easy change for the users. If you're looking at ballast water exchange in a designated area or a treatment, so there's a separate set of activities. Again, you choose in any tank in the grid, all of these details such as methods and what was the regulation complied with, all of this would remain, and even the percentage change gets computed automatically. So if I were to say I did 2000 what a 6,000 um, uh, meter cube of volume for making this exchange, then automatically you get the percentage exchange. So the user now doesn't have to really do all these computations. Everything is captured in, the capacity of your tanks is in, and the computation would happen as it automatically within the system. If I touch upon accidents, so you also have these ingress of and exceptional uptakes. And what I found very intriguing in this regulation is that even if you're taking water in a dry dock, now the interpretation says that you've got to take it as uh, as an ingress or an exceptional uptake. And for the user, if he is really confused about where he uses it, so we would have the note itself would tell you that if it's human initiated procedure taken up at a dry dock, then this exceptions should be used. So although it could be used in collisions and other situations, like it says your intake of shore supplied untreated water into ballast tank dry dock facility for this purpose should be recorded here. So uh, I would just imagine if you had a ship where you have to do it on paper and you have to instruct the staff that, for conventional ballast, now you can't take the ballasting activity, but you have to use the exceptions activity. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of training. So where we have sort of come in here is to make it uh, straightforward and simple for the user, and they just follow through on what they see in the screen, and they should get it right. Um, I have, I think, how much? Okay, all right. So I have been signaled that I'm going into too much detail here, so I'll just touch upon the last few bits that are pretty important and really make a huge differences. This part, which now we always had a ballast record keeping book, then we had a ballast reporting form, then we had ballast tank history, and the user was really challenged to make all these entries and transfer the data accurately. So now you don't have to worry about that anymore. You just come to the appendix 3, and here uh, you would have all the details of the history, and you can export it out right away. So if I were to be wanting to uh, let's say make an entry, a new entry, then this form pops up and I can choose which tank's history to show. And this is of course a part of the um, uh, this is a part of the voluntary reporting. But if you're looking at creating a new form, then you just have to come to the ballast water reporting page, and these pages that you see here are auto loaded. So all the history and all the tank details come in right away. So you really don't have to go and enter all these details again, because if you're making a preliminary report, all you do is write the names of the port, then enter the details of ballast water management, and then the tank details load here, and you're ready to go. So I think with that, I'll probably leave us time for more questions, and I'll stop here. But the essentially to recap, we have all the forms in the system, so you don't have to go elsewhere. You can export the same report out. If I were to want a report format, that also can come out from here. So there's no paper filling to be done manually, and the other major change that has been possible with us has been that a lot of this data is now flowing into analytics. So when you look at the analytics side, all data that you see is starting to come in various graphs. So you don't have to really in the office look at
Well, I'll take that one back. It looks like we're losing the link down to
physical
Amitabh.
pages anymore. You can see trends.
Yeah, it looks like we're losing the link to Amitabh. So what I'm going to do in the interim is very quickly ask again. Please feel free to use the questions tab. I note some questions are already in there. We've got about 5 or 6 questions, which is great. I have noticed there are some questions in chat, which I'll bring up for the good of everyone. Some of them have been answered through chat, and they will be answered during Q&A, because I think everyone probably benefits from that as well. I think there may be an opportunity to come back to the bits that Amitabh was going through, especially some of the questions linked to it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Captain Hemant Mehta, and he's going to go through the actual regulation change. So over to you, Hemant.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard, for that. And I'm sharing my screen just to sum up what Amitabh has explained all this while. So basically, if I have to give a small summary, or rather sum it up in explaining where we are. So I'm sure you already read the ballast water MEPC 80 circular. The purpose here is to clarify the process of recording and reporting ballast water operations on ships, including the information needed to be logged in the ballast water record book. That's what the essence of MEPC 80 is. And if I have to bring down in terms of key aspects which the regulation brings in effective 1st of February 25, it is to record the activities in a structured format. It brings in codes, which is in the form of code A to code H, together with these specific items for recording different ballast water operations. It also brings in the appendix, which is the ballast water reporting form, which we showed how it is automated to an extent. It also talks about optional tank by tank logging of ballast water operation. On the certification part, if you do intend to switch over to electronic record book ballast water, you have time till October of 25 to get a certification, because that's the bandwidth allowed. However, some of the flags have already started to issue this, which means that you can go and get your certification, such as Liberia and Marshall Island. For other flags, you need to get in touch with them, especially if they are issuing the certificate through the RO. Moving on, we have come this far, but it's not a one-day game. If you look at the history of how the ballast water has come so far, this is the quick history. We started in 1903, and on your screen is coming up a lot of salient development which took place uh, across all these years, and now we are staring at MEPC 80, which is more structured. Uh, but of course, there are higher standards which are set by US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other local regimes. Uh, Implementation dates and extension is always a game which is inbuilt there. There are different rules for coastal and smaller fishing vessels which we have to play out. But end of the day, you are dealing with these invasive aquatic species which you have been saving the world from. So job well done by all of you. Uh, to the final part, just due to paucity of time, I'll just rather come back in terms of pointing out that if you do adopt a electronic record book, let's say whether it's Ballast or any other, this is what you get in terms of an increased compliance, increase of storage space, informed decision, sustainability, transparency, confidence. Of course, on the other hand, there will be a decree with respect to lesser of errors, duplication, procurement cost. And we spoke about and also showcase some of the glimpses of what you can do, including getting in your positions automatically when you connect your AIS or GPS into the NAV box. With a series of validations and alerts, you will be able to avoid silly errors. There's lots of drop-down menus which reduces your admin load. The codes and the item number are now coming automatically, so you don't have to bother about checking and rechecking once you choose an activity. It picks up from the ballast water convention with respect to the codes. You can attach documents which are worth looking at, such as inspection reports or comments from the surveyors. There's also audit log which is there in the application to recreate the history if you want to. The data remains secured with our type-approved software and the type-approved hardware also. You can export the PDFs which are secured, and the data which gets transferred between the ship and the shore through our proprietary NAV box to the cloud is also encrypted. So I will stop here and hand it back over to Richard to take the Q&A session. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you very much, Hemant. That was brief and to the point, but thank you very much. I think what we'll do is I'll ask again, please feel free to put any questions through. We've got an expert panel who you've met standing by. I'll start by going across and we'll move into Q&A, and we'll look at those. I have got some questions that have come through in the speaker, in the audience chat. So I will dip into those and cover those off because I think it's useful. If anyone's asked a question, it'll tend to be that other people through the audience will have that similar question. So we'll cover those off. But if we go to the actual questions we have, so we'll go back to our producer for today. So Bjorn, if we can put up Victor's question, please. This one is a knotty one, perhaps. Subscription fee, platform, where it will be installed, Liberia, Portugal, am I accepted? So there's a wide-ranging question. So I can take a few of these bits and pieces, but then we'll pass across to the experts. Platform where it will be installed. The digital logbooks which we supply is installed on either the NAV box or preferably in the NAV box, but it can be server installed as well. Subscription fee, I think the best thing to do there is to get a customized individual quotation for the system and the logbooks you require. So rather than going in and saying it's log by log, each account manager who runs the fleet that you belong to can supply a specified quote. I know that Hemant has been answering questions through the chat. We've talked about accepted states. Hemant, did you want to come through and talk about those states we have and those that work under RO?
Yes, thank you, Richard. Yes, so primarily the certification is divided into two parts. If I have to take that aspect first, some of the flags have already approved it with respect to Liberia and Marshall Islands. Some of them is through the RO, which means that they would use a type approval and a manufacturer declaration to reach out and get the certification done. And I'll just quickly also take up one more question, which is pinging in the chat, which see what is the main change coming in. So main change, as we highlight, is with respect to the codes which comes in, which is code A2H, which was not there earlier. So that's the change coming in. With our application, it becomes automated, which means you don't have to actually select it. Once you choose the activity, it comes in automatically. That's the major change, together with also introducing the appendix 2, which is the record book form, and also the appendix 3, which is voluntary in nature.
Great answer. I know we have more questions, and thank you so much for sending these questions in. They are vastly appreciated. The first question now, or the next question in line, I've got from Kevin, in saying, is it in accordance with 2025 regulations? So this is a great question, and absolutely what today's webinar is all about. Amitabh, did you want to just cover this off, that we are absolutely in accordance with the 2025 regulations?
Yeah, that's right. The change is in accordance with the February 1st, 2025 regulations to the change in reporting formats. And so what you see in terms of codes, in terms of guidance notes, in terms of everything on these activities that we have captured is specific to the changes that have come into force. And on the reporting, ballast water reporting form, that was meant for arrival ports and to make the burden less. So that format also has been derived from the Ballast Water Management Convention format. Likewise, the voluntary reporting also is derived from this regulation. Yeah, I think unless there's a specific point that you want, then we can answer that as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Amitabh, and thank you, Kevin, for the question. Onward to William Telmo's question now. Can we still use a new ballast water record? I presume that's a paper log instead of a digital ballast water record book after October 2025. It really depends on your SMS, but Amitabh, should we pass across to you for the answer on that one?
Yeah, I mean, the regulation has changed. The reporting format has changed. Electronic logs remain a voluntary means of recording such entries. And so it's like what Richard said, it's up to your organization. If they're switching over, then you could use an electronic logbook, makes it easier. That's all I would say there. And if it's a paper log, then of course they're available on the market. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's very kind and very clear as well. So really, it's down to personal choice or company choice. The next question, and thank you for sending this one in, Gordon. Will the log data from the ballast water treatment be connected to NAVTOR? So that's a good question, a very good question. I'll pass across to Amitabh again on this one.
Yeah, if you during the presentation that I was doing, I mentioned we have a tie-up with Danelec, and likewise we are working with other equipment and sensor data providers. So if your ballast water treatment system can post data to the NavBox API, then we can capture that data in and push it into these records automatically. But that's something that needs to be discussed. So, and it needs to be configured. So we have a mechanism to do that in the software. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Amitabh. Just a quick answer. I know I had a question earlier on about a person who couldn't attend, and there were lots who couldn't attend, and can they watch the webinar later? Just to confirm, and it's been confirmed in chat as well, the link will be posted at the end of the webinar, and it'll be available to all those registered to view straight away. If we go forward now, and thank you again, Sigurd has put a question. Do you have a tab where you can upload diagram identifying ballast tanks of the ship? Well, this is part of the configuration we do when setting up a vessel into our system. So Amitabh showed this in his presentation. I don't know, can we flick across to Amitabh and put back up the system and show the diagram because it is absolutely part of the configuration.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a diagram in the software, which is basically just a schematic. It just tells you the tank and the volumes there. But when you actually export the record out, we attach the actual drawing from your ship's drawing. So this drawing would be then something as a PDF, which gets attached, appended to the log with your specific ship's tank disposition and total tank capacities. That's how it is at this moment.
Thank you, Amitabh. Very clear, very good. If you wanted to see that diagram, you can review the webinar, and you'll see the schematic we have available in the system. So thank you, Sigurd, for that one. Sindra, next question, and thank you again for this one. Do you also arrange the API on other softwares? So this can be part of the ESG reporting as well. Okay, that's a great question. Slightly off outside of this topic, but it's relevant, and it's a good question. Can I pass that one across to Amitabh to answer, I believe?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So yes, we do have an API. There is a vessel API that is available ashore. And I'd shown you a few of the analytics dashboards. So those dashboards are also available as an analytics service straight from our portal. And these would eventually be also available in Navfleet. For those who are users of Navfleet, you can actually view logbooks and also see the analytics by end of this quarter in Navfleet. Otherwise, it remains as a separate analytics portal. So if you're subscribing to the Vessel API, you would get those data points which are captured in the logs, and those can be consumed for various other reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Amitabh, and thank you, Sindra. Good question. We'll move on. There's a very detailed question. Kashif, let's go for this one. If the aft peak tank is shifted for non-ballast purposes, i.e. storage, of the forward for tank cleaning purposes, do we need to record all entries after the code H as entry, as per example 22 of the guidelines? So that's a very specific question. Hemant, is that one you'd like to take as a regulation change?
I would say that the fly guidance should be referred to in these cases, but in general, I can comment that such entries can go in code H. And I think I do get a parallel question in this respect with respect to how we can record a transfer of, let's say, the sewage into a ballast tank. And for that, there's another detailed circular which is given by IMO as a guidance, which is the MEPC 81, which gives you some directions on how to record it. But my suggestion would be that the flag state guideline should be referred to and RO should be approached. But the generic guidance can be taken in respect of MEPC 81, which gives you some guidelines on that.
Thank you, Hemant. Let me just go. I think we've got another question drop in. Yeah. So, Kashif, I hope that answered the question. Good specific question. Thank you very much. The next one is from Andre. Is a logging of tank by tank volume mandatory, or will it be voluntary entry? Another good question. Thank you very much for this. Who would like to take this question? Hemant again?
Yes, it's voluntary as of now, unless we see a change coming in. But our application has already taken that provision, and the Appendix 3 is getting generated automatically. So the user does not have to do anything additional to get this done. Once he fills up the ballast water record book, tank Appendix 3 gets generated automatically.
Thank you, Hemant. Very good. I'll go through. We've got no actual official questions now, but I've got a lot of chat questions that came through that have been answered on the way through. I'll try and review those and just bring a few of them up. I can't display them on screen, unfortunately, but I can bring them up for discussion. Such questions that came through were some of them answered by Hemant. Is there any written instructions available on how to manage new digital ballast water logbook? Well, there's a great question. Hemant, I see you nodding there. Absolutely. Did you want to just answer that one?
Yes, I did. In fact, in the chat, once we install the application onto your vessels, we would be sending out a detailed user guide along with a quick reference guide with respect to how to make an entry. This will also be supplemented by the index. Index is actually an example of how various entries are made and what is the final exported format. We will also have a couple of videos uploaded into our LMS training portal, and the links will be also sent out. So you can watch those videos if you have any more doubts. So in all, we would cover all aspects of giving you a step-by-step guidance on how to use the ballast water log in electronic form.
Thank you, Hemant. That's very good. I noticed there's another point that came from Andre, talking about please advise on the possibility of correcting mistaken entries. And I know that Hemant, you answered this one through the chat. Mistakes can be amended and deleted in accordance with the guidelines. So that actually did get displayed and shown by Amitabh during the presentation. Again, you could review the webinar to see that in action and how that's displayed. I'm just looking through a few other questions. There's one that's just dropped in. Kashif, again, thank you very much for the question. For the digital record book, can office staff cite all entries made on a particular vessel in real time? So that's a great question. Amitabh or Hemant, who would like that? Amitabh, I'll pass across to you for that one.
Yeah, yes, definitely. You can view records in the office. The synchronization is set to about an hour, and of course, if the ship has a decent bandwidth, so you should be able to see it almost instantaneously, if not in an hour. Yeah, so very much there.
Thank you very much, Amitabh. That's very good. I'll keep looking through the chat questions. We covered off the example 22 of the MEPC guidelines. That's all been covered off, and that's in the questions themselves. Paul has asked, and I don't know, Hemant, whether we've answered this one. Paul has asked, can you explain the implication of the new codes A to H in an updated ballast water record book format, how they affect the logging of operations when encountering challenges in water qualities? So it's an interesting question. Hemant, is that one that has been answered, and is it worth sharing that answer with the viewing, the webinar viewers?
Yes, that's right. So subsequently, after the MEPC 80, there's another document called MEPC 82, which speaks about the guidance on recording operational scenarios relating to challenging water quality in the ballast water record book. So these are scenarios. There are, I think, four scenarios which is mentioned in this document, and it breaks it down in respect of how you should record it and what entry should go in the item. So that can be referred to apart from the guidelines issued by your flag state or the RO.
Thank you, Hemant. Great answer. I see lots of answers around that through the chat. And I see Suresh has come also and said Liberia has some detailed examples beyond the IMO guidelines. So that's all useful content. I note, it's not really a question, talking again about cost, and absolutely, we're very open about cost, but what we need to do is when we're preparing a cost quotation is look at what you want in a package. So we'll need to look at the system, the configuration, and the logs you require. So there will need to be a contact with the account manager to make sure you get a quotation for exactly what you want to see. So I hope that one covers off the question there. Vijay, what would be backup failure if there's e-log book? Any backup in the cloud or hard copy? Now that's a great question. Thank you so much for that question. Amitabh, do you want to talk about the backup facilities with digital logbooks, and especially this one?
Yeah, that's right. So yes, there is a backup facility. So as being part of the ERB regulation and requiring to comply with ISO 21745, all the data that is generated on the ship is backed up to a separate external hard disk or a USB drive where this is available at any point of time for recovery. And as an additional step, we also have this data synchronizing to the office. And if in a worst case scenario, the actual database backup or the external database backup fail, you have a third option of picking up the data from the Office Cloud. So these are the three, all access points for the data that is there. And I think if I see the question, it also asks something more. Or did I answer that exactly? What should be the backup of a? Can I just continue on here also a little bit? So you also need to make a change in your SMS, which will state how contingencies will be dealt with. And of course, in worst case scenario, if everything goes down, you would have to switch to paper logs until the system is back up and running. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Captain. That's very kind. I note another question that's dropped in, and thank you, Keshif, again for the question. And we'll put that up. In case of a mathematical error, does the software have the capability to warn of any wrong input? Well, this is one of the major advantages of the digital logbook over a paper logbook. It is because we work against a digital twin. We understand errors can be made, but there's also a gross error check built within the digital logbook. Hemant or Amitabh, did you want to add anything extra over and above what I put on that, and perhaps go into specifics? Hemant?
Yes, I can add on that. You're absolutely right on this part, Richard. We have set of validations and alerts inbuilt into the application, which will check for these mathematical errors to just ensure that there is no silly error which goes inside the application, such as checking for the capacities of the tank, checking for the pump capacity, which means that if you're trying to overdo it, it'll warn you that what you're typing is not correct or a clerical mistake has been made. Similarly, there are a series of alerts with respect to if you're missing out any crucial information to go into the application. So it'll point out that you missed out to make an entry in that respect. So these are the various alerts and validations which we have enabled smartly just to make sure that the mathematical errors can be avoided.
Thank you again, Hemant. Very good and very good content. I know the questions are pretty much answered. We've got one point from Nikos which has come across. It's quite a complex question. I'll try and do you some justice, Nikos, in this question. It's two parts. In case of interconnection has been established between digital logbooks and the primary or secondary means of navigation systems, i.e. GPS or AIS, will there be an incorporated safeguard or a prescribed provision in regards to cybersecurity related threats? So let's take one thing at a time. So if you're installing to Navbox and we're running a Navbox solution, then you will be receiving GPS, AIS, usually AIS information from your own vessel as an input into digital logbooks. Hemant and Amitabh, who would like to answer the cybersecurity element side? We'll pass across to Amitabh, because that's a really critical point.
Yeah, so when you talk about, I think, GPS and AIS positions, the question that comes to mind is about probably GPS position spoofing and whether, there's some sort of changes or alterations happening to that. So in the logbook, of course, like Richard mentioned, you would be getting the GPS and AIS data from the original source as generated. And the Navbox is a cyber secure type approved hardware. So it has certain protection. When this data flows into the logs, it'll flow in as is captured by the Navbox. And the user has the rights to still overwrite it in case for some reason there's an outage or something different. But I guess your question was on anyone tampering with this data or access to this data. So the access is limited. It's all encrypted and stored in the logbooks. Likewise, when it goes in and anyone makes a change, then all those changes are auditable as well. So, and no one can just go in and fudge positions into the system, because once you have to go through the actual software to create those entries, and that's all traceable. Yeah, I think.
Thank you, Amitabh. That's a great question. I know there is another question in from Edwin. Thank you so much for the question. And again, a good detailed question. So as per our experience in oil chemical tankers, digital recording is not acceptable for records of vetting inspectors. They're always asking for manual entries in the book. Maybe we've missed some regulations that states digital recording is acceptable already. So I think that's a good point, and it points to the confusion in the marketplace. Amitabh, did you want to cover off digital record keeping in total?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this question has been actually coming to us from 2019 onwards, and that is before the regulations actually were even allowing logbooks in digital form. So it used to be something like a novel concept that people wanted to go digital, and certain flag states had taken a step forward to allow them. Then, as it progressed, 20 MEPC. The MEPC came out with a regulation for electronic record books, and those changes got incorporated into MARPOL to state that you could voluntarily go and have a digital logbook. And since that change came in, I think it's been 3 years now. But then you're pretty much right to say that it's still subject to a lot of questions, because when you go to a classification body, not all of them are well versed with the regulation, and then they ask questions which are probably unsubstantiated because they just go with their pre-history of what they have known. So the regulation definitely allows digital logbooks to come in for environmental record keeping. And the one that was outside the electronic purview used to be ballast water convention, because they never mentioned anything specific to having an electronic format. And then it used to be subject to a lot of flags interpreting it. So in the era before this ballast water reporting regulation change came into force, it used to be said that as long as you could create the records that were required and it was shown in any format, it was acceptable. And in case you had an electronic format and you would give it to a third party such as a SIRE inspector, then you can print it, stamp it, sign it as a true copy, and provide it to them. So you could comply with this in many ways, but as on date, that has changed quite a bit. So maybe I can take your question offline to know better the specific case. Thank you.
Thank you, Amitabh, and thank you everyone for the super questions we've had this morning. I know there are others in the audience chat. What we'll do is we're running perilously close to time, so we will answer directly to those people with further questions through chat, and we'll come through. I notice there's a lot of communication going through. So really, it's just incumbent on me to say thank you so much for your time. We don't take this for granted. We are very appreciative of your time. And these questions help us, as I hope that they help you as well. On the screen, we're talking about webinar number 22, which is coming. We'll wait to give details of that, but it should be very shortly. We announce webinar 22, and I hope the webinar 22 is about the new features in NavFleet, but we'll come to that in due time. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the contributions from my colleagues today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next occasion. Thank you very much.